That's a great question. It is a native tree to Tennessee, but it is not the state tree. So I was not here when they made that decision. So I think that's kind of a funny fact. But the sycamore tree does have a lot of attributes that we hope to emulate as an organization. So, a sycamore tree has really deep roots. We want to be really rooted here in Tennessee and have deep roots in our research. It loses its bark, and we want to be an organization that is adaptable to the environment around us. And it grows really big tree limbs and a tree canopy. And we want to both encompass a lot, but also it has little seeds that go far and wide. And we really hope that, our research can go far and wide across the state of Tennessee because we are here only to serve Tennessee. We don't serve any other states or, you know, just here. So we want to make sure that we are serving the state as best we can, and that hopefully, those little seeds cover all.
Welcome back to the Redemption Project, everybody. I am Brandon Burley, your host, and today I have with me Grace Barron. So she's going to talk to us about the Sycamore Institute, and she is going to explain who they are, what they do, where they came from, the whole 9 yards. So I don't want to take up too much of her time. So Grace, without further ado, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. So the Sycamore Institute, what is it?
Sure. So we are an impartial, data-driven research and policy center for Tennessee. And what that means is, if you know what a think tank is, we do policy insights and analysis on Tennessee state and local issues. And that covers a whole range of issues. We're known for our budget work, and most, if not all, issues touch the budget in some way. And so we've worked on a wide range of topics within that here in Tennessee.
Wow. So I know that as I was finishing my master's, which was in public administration, when it came to doing the budget classes, I hated those classes more than anything. Now, I'm going to brag on myself for a second. I did still get 99th percentile in my exit exam.
That's impressive.
It was not for the joy of the budget. So that's amazing that you guys are able to focus in on that, because it's so nuanced. And like you said, it touches every aspect of policy and how efficient or effective a policy can be, how much runway it has, how long it may be able to have a test run, right? So when you guys are looking at this, how do you evaluate different aspects?
Let me back up and start by saying I'm the director of external relations. So I do more of our communications and events efforts. So I'm not a researcher, and our research team is amazing in how fast they can work through the budget and the work that they do on all of that. I am impressed by them as well, as someone who sees it up close. So we do two types of budget work. One, we actually just published our 4th edition of the budget primer. So if you're interested in just how the budget works, the state budget, it is hundreds of pages long. And it was the first thing we ever published 10 years ago. And it really just gives a guide as to, how does the process work? What's the history? Why do we do some of the things that we do? What's written into state law? And then we also do an annual analysis of the governor's recommended budget. And instead of reading the big textbook that they put out every year, you can read something that's much shorter and tries to give some highlights along with that context history to understand the process and see how each individual, where you're coming to in the process, whether it's your first time understanding or reading the budget, or if this is something you've been, working with in a long time, you can find information on your specific issue area that you care about and learn how the process works around it.
So do you guys focus mainly on state budget, or do you also focus on major metro budgets or anything like that?
We mostly focus on the state budget. We've done some work on local issues when it's possible. I don't think we've ever done anything on analyzing metro budgets, but we have done some things on property taxes and analyses around that. We have some local data, if you want to know about some of the socioeconomic information of counties across the state. When the information is available, we do that analysis for all 95 counties here in Tennessee. So if you're wondering about the education levels or the insurance levels or, housing in your community, we have a dashboard that you can just click on your county and see that information. So when it's available, we do try to localize things, and that's not just for the metro areas, but also for our rural communities as well.
Wow. So then I guess that begs the question of people are usually suspicious of groups that are giving out that much information or consolidating that much information because they want to know who are you funded by, what are your priorities, things like that. So can you speak a little bit to where you guys are funded from and the priorities?
Sure. Well, and to start, I would say, I understand the skepticism. We say that we're impartial, and there's a few ways that we go about that. One, we don't advocate or lobby for anything. So we really are here as an educational resource to teach about like I said, the history and the context surrounding different issues, but we're not here to tell you what you should do about it. So we see ourselves as a way to, get that information and take it and use it how you see fit, no matter what that policy outcome you're looking for is. We are not going to tell you what that policy outcome should be because that's not our role in the process. We also have a bipartisan staff and board. So we're a nonprofit, so we are primarily funded by foundations. And there's a mix of foundations. We do some events. We do have some individual donors. And all of that is guided by our code of ethics. On our page, you can see the code of ethics at the bottom of the website, and that everyone knows that just because they are funding us, they do not get to determine our research results or our research product. So we are independent in that way, and funders know that whenever they decide to fund our work here.
So do you guys also take individual contributions? Say if somebody wanted to donate $10 a month or something like that, do you guys accept that?
Of course.
So if somebody wanted to donate, where could they go to give that money or get more information?
You can go to Sycamore, TN like Tennessee.org, and there's a donate button at the top. And that's also where you can find all of our research product. Like I said, we're a nonprofit. Everything that we produce is free and open and available to the public. You can see our sources and you can see exactly how we got to the research conclusions that we did. And so, depending on what your topic of interest is, we hopefully have covered something on it.
So speaking of topics of interest, what are some recent topics that you guys have really been focusing in on, or that we could expect to see soon, or maybe just came out?
Sure. Well, like I said, we just published our 4th edition of the budget primer. So that one is updated with new fiscal year 2027. It also includes a new section called Hot Topics that highlights some potential topic areas that we wanted to highlight as maybe topics for consideration going forward. And that one we only published in this past month. In recent history, we have done a series on housing. So if housing is a concern or interest to you, we did a series on housing. So we did one report on, why is housing important? We did another report on why housing has gotten so expensive in Tennessee. And then a third report on policy options. So, depending on what your goal is, what levers of government have responsibility for what decisions. And then lastly, how affordable housing is financed. So if any of those are of interest to you, we did create our first research GIF in that second paper to show how housing costs have risen in most parts of the state over the past, I think it was 10 years. And, we've done work on budgeting for incarceration. We've done work on the opioid abatement fund. We've done work on education. If you want to know how the school funding formula, which is called TISA, or if you want to know about education freedom scholarships and how those different programs work, we've done work on all of those things. The next paper to come out, you've heard it here first. It should come out, I believe, next week on workforce development. So what are the different, I believe it's like a landscape analysis, and it will cover what are different agencies doing in Tennessee in the workforce development pipeline, and how does that work here? So that one will be coming out very soon.
Wow, that's awesome. So when they are looking at workforce development, will they be breaking it down by like corporation size, or are they breaking it down by industry, or are they breaking it down by region, or what mechanism are they using?
I believe it's more of a what initiatives does the state have and other governments that work in Tennessee that are part of the pipeline in workforce. So some of those are like K-12 initiatives, some of those there are federal initiatives that exist to help folks in the workforce pipeline, and then the different education types that folks can do to, as they find their way into the workforce. So it's less about like maybe corporations and more about like what is the pipeline that exists that, prepares residents for the workforce.
And that's amazing. And to circle back to, you were talking about understanding what different aspects of government can control. And that's, I think, going to be of particular interest to the viewers as they are moving into the general election season. And there's frequently discussion and confusion about maybe the rhetoric that a candidate says versus what they can actually control, and understanding what different aspects of government can control. And the one that I really love to use is, I used to have people get upset and say, we need to fix Highway 11. And I would say, okay, depends where it is. It might be a municipal street, it might be a county road, it might be a state highway. That depends on who's going to fix it, right? So understanding who has jurisdiction over what and who can control what is very important, especially when you're trying to make decisions about maybe how you're going to vote here in November. So to that end, how far do you guys break down those levers and that control?
I think when we're talking, because we do a lot of issue area specific topics, we do within that topic try to break it down and really show who's responsible for what. We have done some transportation work. So I do think within those topics, we try to break down as much as we can. This is a federal initiative, this is a state initiative, this is something that local, governments have control over. We do have a report from a few years ago, but it's an evergreen topic called How State Policy Shapes Local Governance in Tennessee. And it's a short brief. I think it's really helpful in explaining how the two governments can work together and, how some of their responsibilities overlap or, what realm of control things might be in. But that housing report, the paper on policy options, had a graphic in it that actually showed, if this is what you're trying to influence, here is the lever of government that is in charge of that. And that one was a very specific one for housing. But I think it would really depend on the topic area that you're talking about.
Very interesting. So to that end, where is the Sycamore Institute? Where are you guys located in Tennessee?
We are based here in Nashville, our state capital.
Awesome. And so being in Nashville, does it help the Sycamore Institute to have that accessibility to the Capitol being right next door, or is it something that maybe you don't need because now in the digital era everything's online?
That's a great question. I think it probably helps, but I think we are always trying to figure out how we can also be out in the rest of the state, because we do serve all 95 counties. So I think it being the state capital is helpful, but I also think, we're always looking to go visit our other regions and figure out how we can bring this content to the other parts of the state that it's relevant for. So, Memphis and Knoxville and Chattanooga and our Tri-Cities and our rural communities, how can we reach them? And I think there is something about being in person that is meaningful. So I think it's helpful to be here in Nashville, but I think we're also, trying to be present across the state as well.
So how do you guys do that outreach work? Do you have a team that goes out to these areas, or how does that happen?
We are a small but mighty team of currently 4 staff members. And, we do hope to grow, and we're adding a 5th staff member soon. But, our email list, which you can also find on our homepage of our website, that's where we share, or our social media is where we're sharing, when we're going to different communities and how you can interact with us. We also do a lot of speaking engagements at other community events. So some examples of that is we're hosting a housing luncheon in Clarksville in a few months. We are speaking at community events. So I know one of my colleagues is speaking at an event with the Chattanooga Area Food Bank next week, I believe. And we're always, whether we're invited or whether we're hosting it, we really are trying to get around the state. And we do have a team that does it, but it's kind of all of us because we're so small. So it really just depends on who's available.
So I love that small but mighty team of four, soon to become team of five.
Yeah.
So the team of four, soon to be five, we'll just call it the team of five. What kind of roles does each person have, and how does that work?
Sure. We have our president who runs things. And then we have our executive vice president. She has a mixed role of she actually was the founding policy director and has been here for 10 years, which Sycamore is only 10 years old. So she's been here the entire time. We have a policy director who does now lead our research efforts. And then I am the director of external relations, so I lead our communications and events efforts. And that fifth person is a research analyst, so she'll be on the research team as well. So that's all of us.
Wow, that's a large workload. If you to look at the work product that comes out and to see that and realize that it's only a team of soon to be five, that's quite impressive. I'll definitely give you that. So,
Thank you. We hear that fairly often, and it's very appreciated.
is there any history or reason behind the name Sycamore Institute, or how did that come to be?
That's a great question. It is a native tree to Tennessee, but it is not the state tree. So I was not here when they made that decision. So I think that's kind of a funny fact. But the sycamore tree does have a lot of attributes that we hope to emulate as an organization. So, a sycamore tree has really deep roots. We want to be really rooted here in Tennessee and have deep roots in our research. It loses its bark. And we want to be an organization that is adaptable to the environment around us. And it grows really big tree limbs and a tree canopy. And we want to both encompass a lot, but also it has little seeds that go far and wide. And we really hope that, our research can go far and wide across the state of Tennessee, because we are here only to serve Tennessee. We don't serve any other states or, just here. So we want to make sure that we are serving the state as best we can, and that hopefully, those little seeds cover all 95 counties.
Wow. And are you aware if any of your research that you guys have produced has been used in any debates or meetings or agendas as far as policy discussions go?
We have testified a few times in front of different committees over the years. So I know the work was very influential in the TISA conversation, which is when we changed a few years ago, actually before I worked at Sycamore, from our K-12 funding formula, which was called the BEP, to a new funding formula called TISA. We did a lot of work in that one. We testified when the state was considering whether or not to accept federal education funds, and we wrote a paper on that, and we testified before their joint committee on that topic in, I think, 2020. So it is used. We've seen some citations sometimes and things that the different state agencies have published, but it is cool to see the work used in that way. And we do hear from, like local communities sometimes, county commissions or mayors, of how they're using the work in their localities. And that's also really exciting to hear.
Yeah, that's amazing. And to know that the work is being referenced at the highest levels of state government as well, and having the opportunity to go speak in front of committees and be heard directly in a nonpartisan fashion is hard to come by. So that's great. And is there anything else that the Sycamore Institute plans to do in the future? What 5-year plan, 10-year plan, anything like that?
Yeah, there's a lot we plan to do. Just before the end of the year, we have several research projects. We're going to do some topical issue primers leading up to the election of our new governor. So those will just be shorter briefs that cover different topics that may be of interest to folks. As for more long-term, planning, like I said, we just turned 10. So we've been thinking about, what do the next 10 years look like? And, we want to get more out into other parts of the state. We want to continue, doing these different the work that we do and figuring out new and creative ways to engage with folks, whether those are decision makers, whether that's the engaged public, whether that's nonprofit leaders, and the different ways just they can know that this is a resource to them and something that, if they have a question or if they have a research question or a data point that they need, that they can reach out to us. And we're here really as a resource for our state, and we're here to help. And so, we're continually trying to make sure that people know, not just here in Nashville, that we're here to be a resource for them and that we're accessible. So I think those are, in the research plans, and I know that there are more projects. There's always more projects that come out. We'll do an analysis of the governor's budget next year, like we always do. And then some of those other plans, like making sure that we're doing events across the state and, both in the research and also the communications. How can we just reach more people?
Sure. So if a city or a county or an educational system or something wanted to reach out to you guys and say, hey, to come down here and kind of explain who you are, or talk about this particular policy or something like that, is that something that you guys would be willing to do, or how does that work?
Of course, it depends on capacity and availability and what the topic is. Have we worked on it before? But we are always happy when we can to drive across the state. I've been in Johnson City, I've been in Martin, I've been in Memphis, I've been, both, like I said, both in our urban communities and our rural communities. If there's, a group of folks that we can talk to and help them understand an issue better, we're always happy to do that, whether it's an issue or if you just want to know more about Sycamore and what we do and how we try to serve the state.
Oh, that's amazing. Sounds like Employee 6 needs to be a pilot to help you guys get there and back a little quicker.
It's a long state.
It is very long.
Nashville's nice because it's in the middle, which I think is helpful, but it's still some of the far away.
It is a very long state. So if there's anything, did we not cover anything? Is there anything we missed?
I don't think so. I think just whatever your issue area is, we probably have something on it. So if you're looking to get more involved or learn something new, I hope that we can help you do that.
That's awesome. Grace, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it. I appreciate the work that you all are doing and making this information accessible, and keep up the great work.
Thank you very much. And thank you for having me.
All right. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.